Ryan's Ghostly Friend, written by Joey Turner and edited by William Grub. Ryan, the big tank engine, is one of the most helpful engines on Sir Topham Hatt's railway. Whenever he had a job to do, no matter if it was passengers or goods work, he always pushed himself to work hard and get the job done. And he always did it with a smile. Some engines, and even his crew, worried that he worked too hard, but Ryan didn't care. He was always eager to please. One afternoon, Ryan was chuffing back from his shed to Augsburg. He had been working in the yards rearranging trucks and was in need of a rest, but he was still feeling restless. "Don't suppose any help needed down at the docks in there?" Ryan asked his driver hopefully. "Not today, I'm afraid," the driver laughed. "But you do need to take it easy, old boy. You'll met your rails and burst your boiler if you pace yourself." "I can't help it," pouted Ryan. "I just want to do my part." We know, snickered his fireman. "But you won't be able to please anyone if you work yourself to scrap iron." Ryan only sniffed. He was so busy fuming that he didn't notice the faulty points up ahead until it was too late. He found himself traveling down an old siding. "Oops," said Ryan, embarrassed. "No harm done," soothed his driver. "There's still plenty of time. We'll just see where this line goes. Then we can see if we can take the loop back to the junction." "But we better slow down," advised the fireman. "These tracks don't feel very safe." He was right. The tracks were old and rusty, and they were covered in weeds and dandelions. It looked as though nobody had been down this line for a very long time. A twinge of nervousness peeked into Ryan's tanks. As they puffed further and further down, Ryan finally noticed the area around them. The grass was brown and dry, and the trees were dark and twisted. Not a single leaf bloomed out of them. An unfriendly wind blew through the trees, making them creak and groan as they swayed back and forth. "What's happened here?" the driver asked. "Why does everything look so burnt?" "I don't know," replied the fireman. "There must have been a fire here several years ago by the look of it. What do you think, Ryan?" Ryan didn't say anything. He didn't have the courage. Every sound sent shivers down his smokebox, and every gentle breeze of the wind rattled his dome. The further he traveled down the empty rails, the longer their journey seemed to be. Needless to say, Ryan wasn't looking forward to what was at the end of the line. At last, they could see a small clearing up ahead. Ryan bravely urged forward. As they puffed into view, everyone held their breath in amazement. Their journey down the track had taken them to an old shunting yard, with 2 signal boxes and a turntable, along with an old rundown shed and some fuel tankers scattered around the yard. Overgrown brown grass completely covered the tracks. The signal boxes were covered with vines, and the shed looked barren and was full of holes. The trucks looked incredibly stiff in their place, as though they hadn't been moved in ages. Through a little grimy, the turntable still looked to be in working order. But Ryan and his crew were too engrossed in this new area to notice. "Fizzling fireboxes!" Ryan gasped. "How long has this been here?" "Search me," shrugged his fireman. "Looks like nobody's worked here in years." The driver shivered. "Phew, maybe for a good reason. I've got the strangest feeling that we're not supposed to be here." Ryan and his fireman agreed. "Let's just get Ryan turned around and get out of here," the fireman suggested. With that, Ryan slowly and carefully made his way towards the turntable. The table was stationed in front of the old shed, and as Ryan inched forward, he squinted his eyes to peek through the doors. He almost thought he could see a pair of eyes looking back at him. Frightened little eyes that he could barely make out. Ryan was about to try and call out to the pair of eyes when he suddenly stopped just in front of the turntable. "Oh dear," said his driver. "We're running out of coal." "See that? We tell you what would happen if you work too hard," the fireman teased. Ryan's face went as red as a signal. He glanced back at the shed, but he couldn't see the eyes anymore. "We'll have to look for more coal before we can try to head back," the driver sighed. He and the fireman picked up 2 buckets and 2 shovels. "We'll go and see if there's a coal bunker nearby. It'll only be a minute." With that, the crew exited the cab and went to search for more coal, leaving Ryan alone in the yard. Now on his own, Ryan took a look around the yard. Everything stood silent and still. The only sound heard for miles were the blustering wind and the creaky old trees, and the cawing of crows as they flew above. The tanker trucks were eerily quiet, as well as they stood motionless, waiting for an engine that would never come to shunt them. If Ryan had enough coal, he'd be happy to shunt them, anything to keep his mind busy while stuck in this ghastly yard. The silence was unnerving to Ryan, and the poor tank engine couldn't help feeling like he was being watched from all around him. Suddenly, there was a loud creaking noise. Ryan looked ahead and gasped. The shed doors were slowly opening on their own. The frightened tank engine wanted to whistle for his driver and fireman, but he didn't have enough steam. He was about to yell for them when the doors were finally wide open. Ryan took one look inside the shed and gasped. Peeking out of the doors, hidden mostly by the shed's darkness, was a little gray tank engine with 6 wheels. She looked very frightened, her eyes as wide as the moon as they peered right back at Ryan. For his part, Ryan was amazed. He didn't think he'd see anyone in this spooky old yard, and yet he found a timid-looking engine he had never met before. He started to feel silly for being afraid, but he mostly felt sorry for how terrified she looked. He must have really scared her when he came into her home. Not feeling as scared as he was, Ryan gave her the friendliest smile he could muster. "Hello there," Ryan greeted politely. The new engine didn't reply. She only stared. Sorry if I startled you," Ryan continued. "I got turned around back at the junction and came here by accident. Funny, I didn't even know there was a shunting yard all the way here." The other engine said nothing. She looked awkwardly down at her buffers, still looking a little shaken. "You don't talk much, do you?" Ryan asked. The little engine looked ashamed, but Ryan only smiled. "That's okay. I bet that means you're a great listener," he complimented. That seemed to work. As the little gray engine finally mustered a little half smile. It wasn't as much, but it was a start, and Ryan's spoiler bubbled with pride. "Oh, where are my manners? My name is Ryan. What's your name?" he asked. The little engine looked a little unsure, but with a look of content on her face, she started to let off steam. Slowly but surely, She puffed out of her shed and cautiously made her way to the line next to Ryan. Her wheels squeaked and moaned. Her lovely gray paint was covered in moss and cobwebs, and her bunker was overflowing with unburnt coal. It was almost like she hadn't left her shed in ages. On her boiler stood a large ruby and brass nameboard reading Tiffany on it. "Tiffany, eh?" Ryan said. "Well, pleased to meet you, Tiffany." Tiffany gave a quiet smile as she stopped right beside him. Suddenly, a pale figure of a man stepped out of her cab. Ryan had to guess it was either her driver or fireman. The man almost looked to be in bad shape as she was. His uniform was dirty and torn, his skin was icy and pale, and he neither smiled nor frowned. He just stood there, holding a shovel and bucket in his hands. As he silently walked out of Tiffany's cab and clambered up to her bunker. From there, he scooped up a large bucket full of coal. Ryan suddenly realized, "Are you giving me some of your coal?" Tiffany's smile grew as the man droned silently towards Ryan's bunker with the coal. "Oh, that's okay. You don't have to do that. My driver and fireman will be back any minute and..." But the man wasn't listening. He just wordlessly dumped the bucket of coal into Ryan's bunker. He then slowly climbed down, turned on his heel, and walked back to his engine for another bucket full of coal. He didn't even look at Ryan. "Really, I'm fine," insisted Ryan. I don't want to be a bother. You need that coal more than I do, Tiffany." Tiffany only gave Ryan another sad smile. She didn't speak a word, but Ryan somehow knew that she was saying, "She just wants to help an engine in need." The cheerful purple tank engine knew that look all too well, so he said nothing. What happened then? Ryan still didn't know. Perhaps something knocked Tiffany's brake loose. Perhaps she wanted to venture off to find more coal for Ryan. Or perhaps her driver hadn't secured her brake hard enough. Either way, Tiffany began to move on her own. She slowly crawled along the track, the man clinging to her bunker for dear life. Ryan was surprised. "Tiffany, what are you doing? Stop! You can't go without your driver," he warned. But it was no use. Tiffany only looked helplessly down at her wheels as they carried her along. Then there was trouble. A line of tanker trucks lay ahead, and one of them looked to be leaking. "Stop, Tiffany! Stop!" Ryan cried, but it was too late. Tiffany biffed into the trucks, only to come off the rails after hitting their sturdy buffers. There was worse to come. Ryan didn't notice a small spark fly out of the little engine's funnel. It landed on the truck, and the truck burst into flames. Ryan could only watch helplessly in terror as the line of trucks caught fire one by one. Finally, his driver and fireman returned, carrying buckets of coal. They saw the flames and wasted no time rushing to Ryan's cab. The fireman hastily shoveled the coal into Ryan's firebox. When the frightened tank engine had enough steam to be built up, he puffed backwards as fast as he could as his wheels would let him. Hang on, Tiffany. Don't worry, I'm going to get help," Ryan promised as he quickly ran out of the yard, leaving a very distraught Tiffany behind with the burning fuel trucks. It wasn't long before Ryan and his crew found themselves back at the junction. They were all shaken by what happened. They could only see the smoke rising from the distance and knew they didn't have much time. Then Ryan heard a familiar siren. It was Flynn, the fire engine. He was on his way back to the search and rescue center when he noticed Ryan in the smoke. "Ryan, what's going on?" Flynn asked. "Is there a fire down that line?" "There is," Ryan exclaimed in alarm. There are fuel trucks burning. My friend Tiffany's stuck in the fire. They need help. Now. I'm on it, declared Flynn. He quickly switched his roadway wheels and charged the old line with Ryan hastily following.